When I worked on Marin, we were looking for someone to do a guest role, like athletic guy, to try and get Mark in shape. And we were like, what about Rogan? He's like a big athletic guy. So the two showrunners were like, all right, if we go out to a guy like this, who's kind of big, we should be very careful with how it's written. And so they went through all of his old interviews and magazines. They took actual things he had said from the interviews and put it into the script as if like that's his beliefs. Right? That's what he thinks. Marin sends Rogan the script, and Rogan calls up Marin, and he's furious. And he's like, what are you doing making me look like such a idiot? Because Joe Rogan doesn't know what he's saying most of the time and just babbles. And so when he sees it written, he's like, man, this guy sounds like a moron. That stuff you said.
Truly incredible stuff from Dave Anthony and Gareth Reynolds of the Dollop podcast, where the former touches on this guy.
Periods in history where we came very close to extinction are like when there's an ice age.
Yes.
Like those are the most terrifying.
That's right.
When there's global warming, you just move to where it's not so warm, and that's what people have done forever.
Where are they going to go, Joe?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Scientists have captured the Earth's climate over the last 485 million years. Here's a surprising place we stand now. Look at the dip at the end.
Whoa.
That's where we are.
Yeah,
that's reality.
Okay.
And then if you look at the course of history, you look at the rise and fall, like it's never a straight line. Way before human beings ever existed, if you believe these silly people.
Joe is using this Washington Post article and graph to debunk climate change or human enacted climate change. Is he grasping that this chart is 485 million years? So any changes you see on it are over tens of thousands of years. Not a few years, Joe. So that little spike you see over the last 200 years is unprecedented. The rate is unprecedented. Or is that concept just too much for Joe's brain to handle? I mean, here's from the article itself. The timeline illustrates how swift and dramatic temperature shifts were associated with many of the world's worst moments, including a mass extinction that wiped out roughly 90% of all species in the asteroid strike that killed the dinosaurs. Or that at no point in nearly 500 million years that Judd and her colleagues analyzed did the Earth change as fast as it is changing now. That's in the article that you're referencing this chart from, that you're saying debunks the seriousness of climate change. That's bothering me. We need to listen to people that know what they're talking about.
Thus, it is no surprise Marin has said stuff like this.
Rogan.
Okay.
Who's
And-
that? Who's that?
Joe Rogan.
Joe, Joseph Rogan?
Yeah, he's out of Texas.
Oh, Texas. Got it.
Yeah.
I got it. Got it.
Yeah.
You love Austin, don't you?
He's running half the planet out of Texas.
Yeah.
He's got a tight hold on the enlightened meathead.
Dude, Marin's disdain.
It's not disdain. It's reasonable criticism.
What do you think the Austin shelf life is going to be?
Well, I don't know. Like, I think that it's so effectively tribalized at this point. It really comes down to material. I mean, at what point, it's like whatever they represented in terms of policy. And it's not a stretch. It's like they won. Trans people are frightened. They have no ability to get health care anymore. And they're afraid of being alive and have no freedom left. So that's done. When do you stop with the jokes?
When do you stop with the jokes?
And like immigrants, okay, well they're being ripped away from their homes, and they're all terrified, and okay, so that's done. When do you stop with the jokes?
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to pick on the vulnerable and the marginalized, but I mean, they're down.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
they're down.
why do you got to keep hitting them unless you're a hack? Now there's a question.
Wow, Mark. Wow.
My idea of what he's done to comedy.
Sure.
And I don't think it's great. I think that it's tribalized, and I think that he's created a sort of army of people that think they know comedy, but they only know a specific thing, and what they think is good is not necessarily good. It may be what they're like, what they like, but on the outside of that, most of this sort of sensitive weirdos that we all grew up with in comedy have been sort of pushed aside, and the space for them has become limited.
You wrote something after the ice raids in LA and the bombing of Iran that I printed out. I was wondering if you could read that kind of gets at exactly that.
I'm going to read what I wrote.
Yes.
I hope all the anti-woke comics are happy about pushing this all through. The big question is, when will they shut up about trans people, intellectually challenged people, immigrants, the disabled, and minorities? I mean, they won. The policies they were supporting, whether they knew it or not, are happening. All the language and law that protected the vulnerable and marginalized and gave them a leg up have been destroyed. History is being erased and rewritten to support Christian nationalism. Creativity, tolerance, and the path to equality squashed. I hope it was all worth it so you can say the R word again. I covered in the special that, real rights are denied and real lives are at stake because of, what comics thought was an anti-woke was just about their language issue, and now they were used in under the sort of auspices of anti-woke. You destroy all the policy that helps people who are vulnerable or marginalized or in trouble, and I can't separate them. I will remain committed to the fact that they did that comics helped that. I do still think that outside of just the kind of emaciated world of press and this chasing of clickbait, I do think in terms of the ideological bend on it is that it's anti-elitism, it's anti-intellectualism, it's anti-expert. I think it's all part of that. I think that in terms of how fascism or authoritarianism, we've got a president who is a thug. So, his way of doing business is like, oh, you got a pretty nice university here. Hate for anything bad to happen to it. Hey, it's a nice state. No, hate for anything bad to happen to it. Maybe you kick into the charity. Yeah, it's straight up mob. However you see Trump, he's still a puppet to something that is bigger that he doesn't give a about, as long as he can be the guy out front. But those guys are the guys that are dismantling the federal government in the name of Christian nationalism. But I think that the way that business, see, what you're saying to me feels like that, fascism is good for business.
Yeah.
Because if you, like Netflix will just, co-opt anybody that can take that algorithm. And I think I used to do a joke about it. Netflix can become Reichflix, very quickly.
I don't think that you could have a better, more credible source than someone who was a writer for Mark Maron. They cast Joe Rogan. They literally do mountains of research on the guy and emulate him from his interviews, present him as the man he is, and for him to get very upset at the character that they are portraying in this show. That is remarkable. That is the guy that has the most loyal audience on the internet. That is the guy who clearly cannot remember anything that he says. Is it from smoking too much weed? I don't think so. I think he's just that guy. It makes sense, and yet it still caught me by surprise when I heard this. Because I know that he is just like a degenerate mouth breather at this point who sold out to billionaires and our future first trillionaire. While none of us can afford rent, car payments, hospital bills, mortgages, price for groceries. I can go on. But hey, good job, Joe. We did it, Joe. We did it. You got a huge contract with Spotify. You're making millions upon millions of dollars on your podcast every single year, and yet you claim to not be conservative when you attended the inauguration of a fascist that you supported. Good work. Or maybe you don't even remember who you supported.